Episode 2 picks up right where Episode 1 left off. Sarah sees what's going on and knows she has to act quickly. So she runs over to the sprinkler system and turns it on. The guards act like they've never been hit by water. And the guard with the phone completely forgets about the fact that Ward Cameron wants to see who it is that broke into his house. She leaves it on in the hopes that the water damages the phone, and luckily for her, it does. Eventually, she pops out from the side of the house and says, "What's going on? I'm here house-sitting for the Camerons." The guards, however, start asking questions that she really doesn't have the answers to, so she sprays some of them in the face with something, and her and John B. get the hell out of there. Ward Cameron still has no idea that it was John B. who was in his house. When Sarah and John get to a safe place, she rips into him, saying, "You lost the only money that we had. You almost got us both caught, if not shot. I've lost my brother, my father, my little sister. I can't lose you." She then tells him that she's calling the shots from here on out, and she actually has a plan. It's to go back to Captain Terrence, who has been hitting the bottle hard since they lost out on all that gold. She shows up at the boat and is talking to a very inebriated Captain Terrence, telling him, "I have a proposition for you. You saw the gold. It was there, just like we said it was. But it's not going to be there for long. My father has to come down here and move it. We need to steal it before he flies it out of here." He's kind of hesitant at first, but Sarah says, "Come on, you have a boat that can get us out of here. You know people all over the island, and I can find out exactly when that gold will be on the move. And I'll give you $2 million. Terrence and Cleo start haggling with Sarah, and eventually they agree on the price of $10 million per person. So Terrence, Cleo, and their security officer, Stubby, are going to help John B. and Sarah steal the gold back. The next day, Sarah knows she needs to get information on when her dad is heading down to Nassau. There's only one person she can trust at home, and that's Wheezy. She calls her up from the Bahamas, and at first Wheezy thinks that it's somebody playing a joke. But just like John B. had to do with the Pogues, Sarah ends up telling Wheezy something that only she would know, and Wheezy is ecstatic to find out that her sister is actually alive. She tells Wheezy, "I need you to keep this on the down low. I have a really big favor to ask. Have you heard Dad talk about what Gavin flew to Paradise Island?" And Wheezy tells her, "I heard him talking to Rose the other day. He said he has to fly out to Nassau to meet with some bankers. It sounds pretty urgent, and he did say something about vault services and transport." Sarah asks Wheezy to find out exactly when that meeting is taking place, and Wheezy says, "Yeah, of course." So Wheezy goes into her dad's office, opens up the computer, and finds his calendar, taking a picture of it and texting it to Sarah. But Wheezy gets caught by Rose. Rose overheard the conversation, at least on Wheezy's end, and she got suspicious. She got even more suspicious when she saw that Wheezy was sneaking around her dad's computer. But when Wheezy's caught, she chalks it up to, "I'm sorry, I'm mourning the loss of my dead sister," and walks out of the room. Now that Sarah knows when this meeting is going down, she knows exactly what her father's going to do. She starts going over exactly what Ward is going to do. He's going to transport the gold to a private air freight company located on a private runway strip. They need to intercept the gold before it gets on the plane. Luckily for them, there's only 2 roads that'll take them there. So if they cause a diversion on the one road, Ward and his crew aren't going to have a choice but to take the one that Terrence, Sarah, and his crew want them to take. So they're going to set a trap for Ward and his group where right before they get to the airfield, they come out, ambush them, and take the gold. As Terrence shows John B. exactly where they're going to pop out, Sarah and Cleo start walking around because they need to wrangle up a distraction. Cleo starts giving Sarah her backstory about how her father left, her grandmother died, she was kicked out on the street, and then one night she was sleeping on a dinghy when the mooring broke, and then she heard a voice yelling at her, "Hey, you know how to tie a bowline?" That person was Captain Terrence. After that, she's been with Terrence ever since. She then says that Stubby isn't the brightest guy in the room, but you don't have to watch your back with him. Terrence, on the other hand, is like a wrecking ball. He'll smash anything that's in his way. You always have to stay 2 steps ahead of him, and you really can't ever trust him. She then walks over to a group of kids, though, because they are going to be her distraction. Now that Sarah and her team have a plan, they just have to wait for Ward to arrive. And over with Ward, when he got that phone call, he was waiting to meet up with Gavin to do the exchange. When he couldn't see the FaceTime, he hung up and he went to go do that exchange, unknowingly being watched by the Pogues. The meeting is going down in a construction site, and it is pouring rain. To make sure that they have proof, Pope has brought a camera so he can video record the entire exchange, at least from a distance. They see both men run into the abandoned building, and they can see Ward hand Gavin something in a duffel bag, but they can't see what it is, and they can't hear them talking. But in the duffel bag is not what Gavin wanted. It's not nearly as much money as Gavin wanted, and that pisses Gavin off, which is something that the Pogues can see. Because it's not the agreed upon amount, Gavin doesn't want to give Ward the gun. The 2 men start fighting in the house for the gun. All of this being recorded by Pope. And while they don't know what the 2 men are fighting over, they can see that Ward is clearly kicking the shit out of Gavin. Ward ends up grabbing the gun from Gavin, and the Pogues can see it and figure that it must be the murder weapon. But in the building, Ward is telling Gavin, I have the gun, you've got your money, just go home and shut up. So as Ward is trying to leave the building, Ward then tries to leave the building, but Gavin gets up and says, Rafe killed a cop, and I'm not going to jail for you and your psychopath son. And that's when Ward turns around and shoots Gavin. And the Pogues cannot believe that they just got a murder on camera. Ward ended up dropping the gun, though, and because there was so much rain, it ended up getting lost in the sewer. The Pogues continue to videotape Ward trying to locate the gun, but then out of nowhere, Key just starts screaming, what is wrong with you? You're a murderer. Ward faintly hears this and turns his attention from the sewer to wherever the sound is coming from. It forces the Pogues to get down from the roof where they were videotaping. But as they're getting down there, they're trying to do it as quickly as possible. Key ends up stepping on JJ's hand. JJ ends up kicking Pope in the face. Pope ends up dropping the camera, and basically everything that they just videotaped is destroyed. They're pissed off that they just lost the videotape, and all of them are trying to process what they just witnessed. Pope says, it's got to be the gun. It's got to be the one that Rafe used. Gavin must have kept it. But as Pope and JJ are trying to figure out what just happened, Key ends up calling the police because, they did just watch a man get murdered. So they give the cops the details, and they wait for them to arrive. Officer Shoups shows up 45 minutes later, but there is no body. It seems like Ward Cameron cleaned it all up. And the problem is, Shoups having trouble believing the Pogues' story. And they do have proof, but the tape is ruined. Shoup tells him, I don't know exactly what you want me to do with this. I mean, you dragged me out in the middle of the night for nothing. Pope starts telling Shoup the entire layout of their theory about how Ward must be paying off Gavin for hush money. He was on the tarmac that day, and so on. Shoup then just starts walking back to his car. As the cops leave, Pope tells JJ and Key, we're not done. We can still go get the gun. They agree to reconvene the next day to try to get the murder weapon. But even though Shoup thinks there's no way Ward Cameron could have cleaned up a dead body in 45 minutes, he did in fact clean up a dead body in 45 minutes. He puts Gavin's body in his truck, and in the middle of the night, he wakes up Rafe and tells him, I need your help. He brings him outside and shows Rafe what's in the back of his truck, and immediately Rafe starts freaking out. You'd actually think for a second that Rafe didn't murder somebody already. Rafe starts screaming, whose body is that? And Ward has to put his hand over his mouth and tell him, shut up. When he finally gets Rafe's undivided attention, he tells Rafe why he had to kill Gavin. And when Rafe hears that Gavin was planning on turning him in, all of a sudden he's completely cool with the dead body in the back of his dad's truck. In the wee hours of the morning, Ward and Rafe drag Gavin's body to their boat and get rid of it. After getting rid of the body, Ward needs to figure out how he's going to get the gun back. Ward tells Rafe that it washed down the storm drain, and they need to find it and get it back ASAP. So Rafe tells his dad, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Rafe is going to need some help, though, and he heads to Barry's. The first thing he tells Barry is, you no longer have this blackmail over my head. The police already questioned me, and there's nothing that you can tell them that they already haven't heard. But I need some help, so do you want to make some money? Barry and Rafe head over to the storm drain that Ward said the gun fell down. But the Pogues are also searching for this gun. And when Barry and Rafe show up, Key is crawling through the outlet to try to get to the storm basin to see if that's where the gun is. Of course, Barry and Rafe have no idea about this. Barry explains to Rafe that it's either in the storm drain, which you don't want to be in because it's just some nasty stuff, or it's in the outlet. The easiest thing to do is just flush it out, open the waterway up, and then go find the gun in the outlet. But when they go to turn the water on, all of a sudden they start hearing screaming. Because as Key was looking for the gun, she lifted up something dead in there, and she started freaking out. So Barry and Rafe faintly can hear somebody down in the sewer drains talking about a gun, and Rafe knows exactly who's down there, so he turns to Barry and says, flush him out. And Barry says, hold on a second. If I do that, it's going to kill him. And I'll tell you right now, you don't want any more dead bodies on your record. Rafe, though, is hell-bent on turning the water on, and even though Barry tries to tell him, you don't realize what you're doing, Rafe says, then move over, I'll do it myself, and he turns the water on. All of a sudden, Key turns from worried about something dead that she pulled up to getting drowned out of a sewer. When the water gets turned on, Key doesn't have enough time to make her way back to JJ and Pope. JJ and Pope realize that Key is going to have to go out a manhole cover. Problem is, she's trapped. She can't push it herself. JJ and Pope run up to the street and start grabbing on it, and they're able to get it off just in the nick of time and save Key. And even though Key almost died, it wasn't like she almost died for nothing, because in her back pocket is the gun. That night, they run the gun over to Shoup, hoping that he can run some ballistics tests on it and prove that it wasn't John B. who killed the sheriff. When they give the gun to Shoup, though, he's still having a hard time believing their story. Even though a gun is sitting there in front of him, he's pretty skeptical that that is the gun that they're talking about. The gun that killed Peterkin that Rafe was holding, and the one that apparently killed Gavin, because Gavin's body is still missing. The Pokes start getting pretty animated and start insulting Shoop to the point where he just kicks them out. Right before Pope leaves, he turns to Shoop and says, "We brought you the murder weapon. There's no logical reason for you not to send it in." But Shoop just tells him, "Go with your friends." When the Pokes do leave, though, Shoop runs the gun's serial number, and he's pretty surprised to find out that it is indeed registered to Ward Cameron. He tucks the gun away because he's got to figure out what he's going to do with it next. After they left Shoop's office, though, JJ went home, but Key went to go shower because she smells like straight sewage. And after she does, she's sitting there with Pope, and Pope is trying to be a little bit affectionate, but their relationship's been weird since she kissed him. And when he puts his arm around her, she pushes him away and says, "Stop." He looks at her and says, "Well, I kind of just thought after the other night." And she tells him, "Yeah, the other night was the other night, but I was high." She realizes how she sounds, so she tells him, "Look, I'm just really stressed out. I've got sewage in my lungs. Let's just see what happens, okay?" That same night, not too far away, Rafe has to go to Ward and tell him that he looked all over the place, but he couldn't find the gun. But if the Pokes have it, they can just say that they stole the gun. Ward then tells Rafe that the next day he needs to head to Nassau, and he wants Rafe to come with him. He tells Rafe that he feels like he just needs somebody that has his back, and Rafe assures him, "I've got your back." So the next morning, Ward and Rafe get ready to head to the Bahamas, but before Ward leaves, Rose tells him, "I'm pretty sure Wheezy's on to something." Ward, though, brushes it off, tells her it doesn't matter, gets in the car, and leaves. When he gets to the Bahamas, he shows Rafe why they showed up. Rafe can't believe that they have all of that gold. When you find out that you just got $250 million, you forget about the fact that you killed a sheriff and you no longer have a sister. Rafe starts acting like it's buy one, get one polo day at the Lacoste store. I mean, he's freaking out. He then tells Rafe that that day on the tarmac, that's what was on the cargo plane. And that without Rafe, they have no gold. They then pack up the gold and get ready to drive it to the airport. But at the same time, Sarah and her crew are getting ready to steal it. Stubby's the lookout. He's phoning Sarah and John B. to let them know exactly what Ward's packing. And he's basically got a small militia with him. Cleo and Terrence are posing as a roadwork crew who are going to tell them that the road they're on is closed. But they need to get Ward to lose his security detail. And the way they do that is having a bunch of kids flood the streets, distracting the drivers and putting spike strips out. Ward and Rafe get so freaked out that something's up that they just bolt, telling the militia, "Meet us at the tarmac." When Ward and Rafe reach Cleo and Terrence pulls a gun on Ward, and Cleo puts a knife to Rafe's throat. They make them get out of the vehicle, get on the ground, and then Terrence yells for John B. and Sarah to get in the car. But Ward was able to sneak a peek on who is stealing his gold, and he notices that it's Sarah. He starts to get up, and the whole time they're warning him to get down on the ground. But he's not really listening. He can't believe that his daughter's alive. Rafe can't believe that his dead sister is about to steal their gold. Cleo abandons Rafe to try to control Ward along with Terrence, and that's when Rafe pulls a gun out. He points it at John B., who has a gun pointed at Ward. But right before Rafe fires it, Cleo is able to knock his arm away, grabbing the gun from him. A shot did go off, though. Terrence then pistol whips Ward and instructs both John B. and Sarah to get the hell out of there. John B. has to hurry, though, because at this point, Rafe's security detail is caught up. Even though the gold in the back of the truck is really weighing them down, they're able to lose the tail by making a sharp right and turning into a field where their truck is completely covered. John B. is pumped. He's got the gold, he lost the tail, but that's when Sarah realizes that she's got blood on her because she's been shot. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.